Welcome to our webinar today. We are very excited to have you. My name is Maddie Duke, and on behalf of ABA Technologies, I want to thank you for being here today. At ABA Technologies, what we do is we help small and medium companies who have specific performance problems by making sure that employees know what to do and by making sure that they know how to do it. Dr. Alison Betz is our presenter today. She is the VP of Business Development at ABA Technologies, and she is a behavior analyst who has been working in safety and with fleets for over 10 years. So without further delay, Alison, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Maddie. And thank you everybody for coming. I am excited for this talk, a little bit different than what I typically talk about. I will probably challenge your thought on the traditional view of safety today. Many of you guys have heard me talk on fleet safety, why drivers do what they do the last couple of years at different events. Today, we're going to take it a little step further, and I'm going to really start diving into why these policy-heavy, rule-based approaches are not going to help your companies achieve that strong safety culture that you're likely looking for. And going into what we think the first step to changing that cycle and creating effective safety culture. So today, really my goal is to demonstrate how shifting your focus from the paperwork and regulation and policy to people-focused can transform your safety outcomes. And when you focus on the behavior of those people and everything that is influencing that behavior, you don't just reduce incidences. That's, of course, going to happen. But what you're really doing is building a culture that drives positive, safe performance. No, there we go. Okay. So here's our agenda for the next hour or so. I'm going to try and go a little bit quickly, so we might have some time for question and answer. So what we're going to be doing today, first, we're going to identify the key differences between that compliance-based and a behavioral approach to safety and recognize when behavioral methods are most effective. Then we're going to look at understanding how behavioral assessments work to identify driver behavior patterns and create targeted coaching and intervention opportunities. This is going to be the core part of this presentation. So we're taking it a little bit farther than just like, why do drivers do what they do? And really start giving you some tools that can help you make more effective change. And then finally, we'll go into explaining kind of why behavior assessments are a valuable investment for your company and what the outcomes are that you'll see. So starting off with kind of a comparison between a traditional and behavioral approach, despite billions of dollars being invested in safety programs, organizations are not seeing dramatic improvements that they would like to, or in fact, that they really need. The traditional approach has somewhat hit a wall, and we've seen this and heard this a lot with companies that we've been working with and talking to. Data show that this approach is costing us with an average non-fatal crash costing about $75,000. And that's non-fatal, and that doesn't even include the nuclear verdicts or negligent entrustment costs as well. That's just the cost of the accident. Take that with the fact that 94% of incidences involve some sort of human error. So clearly, the current approach to changing our driver behavior is missing the mark. 94%. That means, yes, a small portion can be a result of other factors, such as maybe a maintenance issue, a breakdown, something like that. But 94% can be attributed to behavior. Now, don't get me wrong, traditional safety programs were very well intended, and I'm not saying that if you have a more policy heavy compliance based approach that you're wrong and that you're purposely doing it wrong. That's not at all what I'm saying. It's just that often those who are designing those more traditional approaches are not necessarily experts in creating the sustainable behavior change. So likely what we see people creating these policies and safety programs are experts in environmental and health and safety. They're experts in operations. They might be experts in fleet management. But what oftentimes is missing is the expert in human behavior, right? And in changing human performance for the long term. And I do pride myself in spending many, many years studying this and becoming an expert in human behavior. And it's not something necessarily that is going to be very easy for us. It's not going to be something that comes as common sense. And sometimes it sounds perhaps even contradictory to what we think we should do or what we've heard in the past. However, um, the those who are designing the programs, although again well-intended, often tend to take what we call a reactive approach. So there's a heavy focus on those policies and regulations and what happens in response to risky behavior or an incident. Okay. And that's where there tends to be a disconnect and a big difference that we'll focus on between the more traditional approach and the behavioral approach. Waiting for an incident to happen before taking action is going to cause more incidences to happen. Sometimes even a check the box mentality is going on. As for audits, we just have to do the minimum standard. We just want to make sure we're getting done what we need to get done to say, yes, we did our job. Check that box. In reality, what we want to do is take it a step further. That's what's going to help us build the safety culture and shift this from I'm doing it because it's my job because I have to versus I'm doing it to really ensure my safety and my team's safety. So why do people continue to do it? Well, like any type of change, whether it's new policy, training, incentive, it's often going to lead to a short-term spike in the desired behavior. So any type of environmental change, I'm introducing a training. We're going to have you watch this hour training on distracted driving. We're going to try this new incentive program where if you get above a certain threshold on your dashboard score, you get something. Or perhaps it's we're having way too many instances. We're going to just put a new policy where if you have this many, you have to do new training or you are getting you're written up or whatever it might be. Anything like that, although well intended, what's going to happen is you see a quick spike. Okay, so you will see because it's a change. Basically, if you think about it, what it's doing is it's bringing attention to safety, to the behavior that it's targeting for a short period of time. So if you think about it, when people say, like, if you just track your nutrition, if you just track what you eat, oftentimes you'll see a change in itself. Typically, that's for a short term because it's this new thing, right? Same thing with new policy or something like that. It's a new thing. It's bringing attention to the behavior. So we're just, even if it's in the back of our heads and we're not really aware, we are thinking about this new behavior. So great, we see a short and kind of nice spike in the desired behavior. And what happens there is then the leaders, the policymakers are like, yes, that's awesome. It worked. They made the change. They think everything is hunky-dory. They think it's great. The behavior is looking good. They stop tracking, they stop attending, and what we see is a decrease. Okay. So you'll see a lot of this in poor, maybe not as thoughtful change management processes within behavior change in organizations where you're not thinking about the long-term sustainability of whatever it is. So we do something cool, we do something new, It's flashy, it's shiny, and then that new fun shiny thing dulls, and it's no longer fun, and it becomes something that is just kind of in the background again. Okay, so we have to shift that cycle. We have to break that cycle. When we think about why we're seeing these initial spikes in safe behavior, a lot of times I like to use the analogy of this tree in the forest, right? So if a plant is dying, and we treat a symptom, so the leaves represent the system, we're oftentimes if we see a problem, we're treating a symptom of the problem. Okay. That is like putting in the policy. We're treating the symptom of, okay, driver is speeding, put in a new policy to stop the speeding. Okay. So if you think about just like if you take cold medicine, right? When you're sick, you might be temporarily relieving your stuffy nose and congestion or cough, but once that wears off, the symptom comes back. So we can take that same approach or same analogy into these interventions and things that organizations are doing to treat the symptom. And in the case of you being sick, unless you go in and you're actually treated for the virus or whatever is the root cause of the stuffy nose, your illness is going to continue. Unless you really look at the root cause of why risky behavior is occurring, it's going to continue. So yeah, we can treat the symptom, but we need to really dig into the root cause to get long-term effective change. Additionally, when you're focusing on the symptom, typically you're focusing on a single individual or maybe a small group instead of looking at the bigger picture or the forest, right? You're missing the forest in for by looking at the one tree, the one thing that might be happening. In this analogy, it's we're missing looking at the system in the organizational structure and the processes there. By just treating the symptom, you're looking at the individual, you're not looking at the bigger picture. So we want to step back and look at the whole forest. We want to take into account the whole body and what's happening in, and really getting in at what we call the root cause of the problem. So, um, by looking at the root cause, um, you're avoiding the real issue in by not looking at the root cause. I'm sorry, you're avoiding the real issue, and by doing more of the same, you're going to continue to see more of the same results. So these initial spikes, and then it goes down. Now we need to try something else because the problem come back. We see a spike and then it goes away, right? So we want to break that cycle. And there is a better way by turning from just compliance, check the box, to really shifting into a cultural view is how you will get that long-term change where you'll see the change, you'll see the spike in the safe behaviors, and that will maintain. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So our approach, the behavioral approach, is an extension. So what we call at ABA Tech, we call our approach values-based safety. And this is an extension from what you guys may have heard of before, behavior-based safety. Now, in any behavioral approach, observable, measurable behavior is going to be very important. That's going to be a pretty strong focus. So what the driver is doing, right? We're focusing on the behavior. The primary focus of our values-based safety approach, however, and what sets us apart from our traditional BBS approach, is that we're ensuring an organization has a shared safety values and a shared purpose. So by doing this, we go beyond that traditional kind of data-driven intervention to reduce risky behavior, because the driving force behind any safe behavior becomes what we look at as a personal commitment. When you're really tying it to the values, it becomes a personal commitment for each employee, along with the shared organizational values. So it goes beyond just the check the box, I'm doing it because it's my job. They're doing it because now it's attached to what's important to me. So here's just a table that kind of explains the difference between a behavioral approach and a more compliance-based approach. So oftentimes in a compliance-based approach, what you see is that employees are blamed. They are the reason why the accident or incident or risky behavior occurs. Whereas in a behavior-based approach or a general behavioral approach, we look at the context. So yes, the driver behaved, but our worldview is more of they're behaving exactly how they should in the context in which they're behaving, because it's set up for it. The environment is arranged for all of us, no matter what behavior we're looking at, to behave just the way that we do. Right? So if we want to influence or if we want to change driver behavior, we have to look at changing the environment. Oftentimes, compliance-based approach creates frustration because of that blame. So they think that employees think they're just out to get me. They don't understand. They don't know what is going on, or they don't even follow the safety rules. Why should I? So there's a lot of frustration. Where in a behavioral approach, it focuses more on a collaborative coaching approach. Everybody has ownership, and it really focuses on the frontline workers, the people who we're targeting to be an active part in the development and the culture and have a very strong voice within the safety program. So it's not just us talking at them from above, but it is collaborative. They're working together to fix the problem. Compliance based tends to be more reactive, where behavior based tends to be more proactive. And compliance based tends to focus on a very specific incident. What happens? Let's figure this out, which is good. It gives us information. But if you focus too much on that, again, you're missing the forest. And so the behavioral approach focuses on that broader cultural change to see a bigger picture. So each individual tree is important, but the focus becomes we want to make sure the health and safety of the forest sustains as well. Now, I'm not saying for people to go and throw away all of their policies, and I'm not at all saying policies are not important. They are. There is a place for policy. We have to have certain regulations. We have to have that in place. But what we need to understand is how the current policies are actually influencing our safe practices throughout the organization. Sometimes our policies are having a direct negative impact on safe performance and safety. So oftentimes what we see is this light bulb moment go off with people and companies that we're working with when they recognize that their policies may actually be setting up what we call competing priorities. And it may actually encourage risky behavior. Okay? So policy, you have to think about it is not just your safety policy. This is policies and standard operating procedures across the organization. And this competing priority happens across all industries, in all departments. So take, for example, meeting my delivery quota. There's a policy, I have to be on time, right? I have to make sure that I meet my requirements within my delivery within X amount of time. When I was growing up, I remember, I'm going to age myself, but I remember when Domino's came out with a 30 minutes or less delivery for pizza. And if you didn't hit your 30 minutes or less as a delivery person, they got it for free. I guarantee if you look at the data from that ad campaign, that safety became a lower priority. So there probably was a lot more speeding and reckless driving to hit that 30 minutes or less, because now they might not get a tip. Maybe it comes out of their paycheck, right? So there's competing contingencies there. Do we want the drivers to drive safely and perhaps miss the 30 minutes? or do we want them to make it? If you're pushing, you need to be 30 minutes or less, you're going to behave in a way that makes you get to that 30 minutes or less. Productivity bonuses. So if you're looking at manufacturing, right? So oftentimes if you hit a quota for productivity, you can get incentive or bonus. There's things where people are paid per widget, insert whatever they're putting on the production line above their productivity. If they're manufacturing, if their line goes down, what we see is if productivity is emphasized, safety is put at risk for fixing the machine ineffectively, for not going through the safety procedures. There might be even if the machine comes back up, there might be some um, behaviors that could occur that are risky, but accidents don't happen a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and risk it because I really need that extra money to pay my bills or to buy a nice gift for my significant other, whatever it might be. So safety gets put at the back burner because the incentive for hitting my productivity goals is more important. So competing priorities throughout the organization, whether it's has to do with fleet, whether it has to do with safety or not, is going to impact how people drive in that car. So we have to look at it as that bigger picture. Another good one is having speedy loading times, right? So like I need to get my vehicle loaded quickly or my truck loaded quickly, um, regardless of ergonomic safety. So they might not use proper lifting techniques. Maybe the machine, the lifting that supports lifting heavy boxes or loading is really effortful to do. It's on the other side of the warehouse. It takes 10 minutes to get it loaded and figured out, and it's just not worth it. I'm going to go ahead and load it this way. Okay, so effort is another way where we're looking at if something is very effortful to do to meet those safety expectations, they might not do it. So even when companies begin to understand that safety must be a value for everyone across all departments, not just people who are engaging in the potential risky behaviors or risky jobs, it's not just the safety department that needs to have the focus. That is when people realize that safety is across all departments, across finance, across operations, of course, across fleet, across sales, across everything. When safety becomes one of the primary values of the organization, that's when we see the light bulb go off, and that's when we see the true changes happening. So what we recommend is starting with this behavioral approach, taking a cultural shift and really creating effective change. To do so, we need to go beyond that traditional approach that focuses on the discipline, and we need to start shifting to the behavioral approach that asks, why did this happen? Understanding the root cause of risky behavior is going to be essential for change. And that is the first step in the behavioral approach. And so that's really what we want to focus on today because that's step one. You take that step, and that is going to be the basis and the foundation for everything else that will be done. The reason why we suggest taking assessment as our first step and really understanding what happens is because if you don't understand what's causing the risky behavior, if you don't understand what's going on underneath the hood, pun intended for fleet, you're not going to be able to fix it. Okay. So what a behavioral assessment reveals, it's going to show us disconnects between policy and practice. We all probably have policy in place that we don't follow. We probably have policy in place that is working against us. So we have to find those. So an example, when policy tells the drivers that they're going to be written up after X infractions, but not that best performer. You know what? That's our best guy. He's our top salesperson. We cannot afford to lose him. So we'll let that one slide. There's an exception of that's being made and showing that there's the disconnect between policy and practice. Competing priorities are going to be revealed. So again, kind of what we were talking about, whether is speed, productivity, sales, what are some of the other things that are being prioritized that might be putting safe performance at risk? Also, and very importantly, what's going to be revealed are the environmental factors in general that are shaping behavior. This is what we call behavior shapers. These are the things that are pushing our drivers to make the choices that they make. Okay. So these are the things such as what my boss says if I'm late, what my colleague or my client does if I don't answer that text message while I'm driving. Okay. What happens when I do miss that 30-minute delivery mark? Okay. By getting to these environmental shapers and competing priorities, we're going to be able to identify those true root causes of risky behavior rather than just that symptom or assumed cause. We're really getting at the actual reason why behavior is occurring. So there are four key components to a behavioral approach to assessment. And these are all very important. And it's beyond the scope of this webinar, but each of these has a lot of detail to what we do. I'm going to kind of go over them briefly. And if you want more information about this process, you're more than welcome to reach out after. But step one is we're going to interview at all levels. We are going to talk to drivers. We are going to talk to fleet managers. We are going to talk to their other supervisors in other departments. We're going to talk to leaders, middle management, operations, finance. We're going to talk to everyone to kind of get an idea of what is important and where safety falls within the context of organizational values. Okay. The purpose of doing so many interviews is we want to identify if some of these things are what we call it can't do problems. So is there a skill deficit? Are there resources missing? Or is it more of a won't do problem, which would result in motivational issues like, I'd rather have that productivity bonus than be safe, right? So there's two different types of issues that we can interview and can help us narrow in on. Next, we're going to do record reviews. We're going to dive into everything that's happened. Ideally, we like to have anywhere from like 2 to 5 years of review, but depending on if there's big changes, if you just implemented, installed some sort of fleet monitoring device in your vehicles, we might start from there. So if that was a year ago, because previous data might not be as relevant, we might still look at some of it, but we'll really hone in on what happened in the past year. We're going to look at incident reports. We're going to look at post-incident investigation information that you have. We're going to take all of that telematic data that you can give us and look at it and see if there's patterns. We're going to look at your previous coaching forms and what kind of feedback has given, any financial information. We're going to look at your insurance claims and your premiums. We're going to take all of that. And the purpose of that is to understand the patterns of behavior. What was effective? If we saw a decrease in incidences, why was that? What was working? If we saw the spike again in incidences, what happened? We're going to start looking at correlations and patterns to put these pieces together. Then we're going to do what we call a safety cultural assessment. This is going to be conversations with employees at all levels. Again, we're going to observe what you already do. If you have huddles, if you have emails that go out, if you have, a lot of people do like the safety highlight in their newsletters, trainings. We're going to talk to people just informally and kind of formally, and what is their perception? We might even have them fill out forms. We might have them fill out a safety culture assessment form to see where people are. And then we're doing observations. So we're going to be looking at what happens. I'm going to be in the warehouse watching people loading. I'm going to be doing some drive-alongs. I'm going to be watching supervisors give coaching and feedback sessions. I'm going to be a fly on the wall in safety huddles that you do, or if your safety team gets together and does incident reviews. Anything surrounding driver safety, we're going to watch. We're going to see what happens during those meetings, during that time when safety is a priority, but also times where safety is not being talked about and how people behave. When safety isn't a focus, when no one else is around, we're going to also be watching and seeing how people behave. The purpose of this is really to see what is happening on the day-to-day basis. It's easy for people to say what they think is happening. We want to see what is actually happening. All of these components are just as important and build off of each other to give us the information that we need to have to know what's working, what's not working, and what's missing. So, why is a behavioral safety assessment worth your investment? Why should we do this? Why should I spend my time or bring somebody in and pay for somebody to come in and do this? That's a lot. I mean, the going back to this slide, that's a lot to do, right? It's not easy. If it were easy, and we would probably all be doing it, and we'd be in a perfect world, have very low incidences and have an amazing safety culture. But it does take some expertise in understanding how all the pieces work together. So why should we do this? That's the million-dollar question. Companies actually often spend millions of dollars on safety solutions and technology specifically. Technology is amazing. The telematics and the fleet monitoring programs are phenomenal. The things that those devices can do and the information has brought safety leaps and bounds ahead of where it was just, 10, 15 years ago when I started talking to companies, and it was a luxury to have fleet monitoring or telematics devices in the cars. Um, but often we don't see the expected results, those decreases in incidences, or the return on investment that we're looking for. So what do companies do? They often then say, okay, well, let's put more money into it. Let's add more technology. Let's do this thing now. This looks like we should be doing this. Because they're not getting at the root cause, right? Technology is great. You can throw that in, but if you think about it, Maddie and I were just actually talking about this. If you think about it, technology, the telematics is a tool that can be used to get you to your goal. But alone, if I have a tool alone, it's not going to fix my roof for me, right? We still need to take the steps to get to our ultimate outcome. The technology that is available is a phenomenal tool. It can tell us what is happening. It is not going to tell us how to fix it, right? So we have to separate that. We need it. It's necessary. It's not sufficient for what we need for long-term change. So how assessment helps with this? First of all, it breaks the cycle of spending time and money and other resources on interventions and solutions that do not actually work. Okay. We are putting a lot of money into things that we hope work because we're not understanding what is actually happening. We're not getting to the root cause. So if you can identify the root cause, which a behavioral assessment does, if you understand why the behavior is occurring, why the problem is happening, this is what we call in the behavioral world the function of behavior, right? So what we're doing is we're looking at the why something is happening. And if we can understand the why behavior is happening in the first place, that's where we can make true change. So I'm going to give you one more analogy in terms of our health. So think about if you're going to a doctor, right? You walk into your doctor's office and you say, I don't feel good. And without even asking any questions, the doctor schedules a costly surgery, right? Later, you find out it was just indigestion or heartburn or stomach ache. That's what some companies are doing. They're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on a solution without understanding actually the real issue. And you could prevent that, right? So assessment ensures that you're not treating that symptom, that you're not treating something that the stomach ache that was caused by indigestion without knowing that it's indigestion. And you're not going above and beyond and throwing all of this money at the problem when it could be a simple fix. So when we talk to companies, there are some common misaligned interventions I want to give you examples of, and some of you might be familiar with these. Um, Training. Now, this is coming from a training company. We provide training, so I'm gonna preface it with that. We see over and over again the biggest mistake I often see when I and hear about when I talk to companies and fleet managers is that they're using training when training is not actually the problem. People know how to do it. We train because we assume a skill deficit. We need to teach you how to do something. But if your drivers already know the roads, the rules of the road, if they already know how to operate your vehicles, if they've already gone through extensive training, that's training is not going to be the issue. If they can tell you how to do it, and they can tell you what they should be doing, throwing more training at them is not going to work. So when you see interventions that will say, okay, you hit these three violations, right? So you've had three violations over 80, whatever it is. Training is being sent to their inbox. They need to just do 30 minutes or 15 minutes on why you shouldn't speed and all of that thing, all that stuff. One, we're putting an intervention if they already know speeding is not something they should do. We're assuming that telling them again not to speed is going to work. That didn't work in the first time. Why is it going to work now? So we're wasting our time on an ineffective intervention. But also, we are now creating this negative association with training and with safety training. So now they open their inbox and they see this thing, they're like, oh, I have to do this another training. So when we do need them to do training, when we do need to introduce a new skill, they have this like aversive like reaction to of like, oh, another training, right? So we're having it's like a double negative. We're not getting to the root cause and we're making other trainings probably even worse for us. Okay. So that's one example. Now, on the flip side, what we've also seen is people just throwing incentives and rewards at a problem when the behavior can't even be done. So I'm putting in I'm assuming that, if I say they can get these gift cards or this swag or this, lotto tickets for a big prize, more paid time off, whatever it might be, we're assuming that that's going to fix it. But in reality, they don't have the resources or they literally don't know how to do it. And if we are trying to, we could offer, you could offer me $1 million right now if I can appropriately and safely operate a dump truck. Wouldn't be able to do it. It's not, I mean, $1 million, yes, I would love that. Give me 100. I would love that. I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm not going to. I don't know the first thing about how to operate a dump truck. Okay. So it's misaligned. It's not going to work. As great as the intervention is, it's not going to work. Now you flip them. Now the person who knows what they're doing and they're not doing it, that $100 might actually work. And the person who doesn't know what they're doing, the training's going to work. But if you don't understand the root cause and you're just throwing blanket trainings or blanket interventions and fixes, you're going to get some hits and you're going to get a lot of misses. Um, a couple real world examples just to highlight again what has happened. Seatbelt violation. We've heard this in a few times where people continue to get seatbelt violations. The seatbelt was broken. In one instance, in one case, when I was talking to an individual, they kept getting violations and they're like, my seatbelt doesn't work. Now, put aside that we need to talk, another issue is why they're not putting in the maintenance request and still driving and things like that. But they were having these violations and getting in trouble when in fact the resource wasn't available for them. They were unable to use the seatbelt. Now, in another situation, they had a driver where they just continually got seatbelt use violations. In talking to that driver in a different company, they were like, it's uncomfortable. I, I don't like it. It rubs on my neck. It's just, it gets stuck. I don't like it. I'm not going to use it. That's a motivational issue that we need to address. Both of those reasons in real life examples of the same behavior have two very different reasons. Okay. Speeding alerts, impossible schedules. They have those deliveries that need to be made versus aggressive drivers, right? Where it's a choice. Their schedule's up to their schedule is doable. They don't need to speed. There's another underlying reason why they're speeding that we need to get to. And there are some people, and this is what policy is made for, there are some people who just will not follow the rules or the law. And that's where policy protects you, where you can say, okay, you have the resources, you have the knowledge, you have the training, and you're still not doing it. Now we need to take the next steps. You're being risky. You're being you're putting other people at risk. It's almost intentional. Now policy comes into play. Poor safety meeting attendance. People don't show up for a meeting. Why are they not coming to our morning huddle? Well, our sales meeting is at the same time, and my boss told me if I don't make that, I'm fired. So I can't make this safety meeting. Versus, oh man, I just forgot. I forgot I was on a walk with my dog, right? So we have to look at both, we have to look at all these changes and differences. So where are you going to see the true return on investment? Now, of course, you're going to save money because you're not going to fall victim to unnecessary solutions, right? So by doing assessment, you're going to see what really works and what doesn't and what you could maybe shave off. But where you're going to see your true return on investment is going to be seen by creating that strong safety culture where it's not just another thing that leadership is asking us to do. Okay. Rather, leadership is showing that they are being intentional and truly care about the safety of the employees by really understanding what's happening and what's driving our decisions and choices when it comes to safety. Right. That is the true evidence that they're focusing on long-term outcomes. Okay. It's not these quick spikes and changes and then everything goes back. We've all heard that, like, oh, you get some kind of rollout, whether it's safety or not. We've all been in that where it's like, oh, yeah, here it is again. Okay, here's a new policy. Just give it a couple weeks and they're going to forget about it because something else is going to come up. We're going to shift that mindset to where safety is not just a thing, a policy, a thing on a piece of paper or a checklist. It is controls, influences what everyone does on a daily basis. It's a part of every decision people make within the organization. So one more time, I can't emphasize this enough. It's in here a lot for a reason. But if you can understand the why behind risky behavior, that's going to be your very first step. The assessment and understanding what's happening is number one step for making effective change. To do this, we have to know all of the variables. We have to dive in. We have to know everything that's influencing our employees' behavior, whether it's in the car, whether it's in the warehouse, whether it's at the office, right? If any type of performance issue you're having can be boiled down to figuring it out through an assessment. That's your number one step. Whether we're working with companies for safety or systems and process alignment issues, or even our training and onboarding, we start with assessment. You got to understand what is influencing behavior to fix it. My background for years and years was in the clinical world, working with individuals with very severe and destructive behavior, right? Very aggressive and violent behavior. The number one thing that we had to do was understand why they were doing it. And there is decades and decades of research that shows if you can get to the why, you have a more effective intervention. If you don't do that, what actually happens across any behavior is that you can inadvertently reinforce the undesired, the behavior we don't want, the risky behavior, because you're putting in things that accidentally shape it up. Right? So that's where the behavioral expertise comes into play. So to wrap up, a few takeaways for you. Traditional compliance-based safety creates temporary spikes. It will potentially work for a little bit, but not a lasting improvement. A behavioral approach to safety, our value-based safety, focuses on environmental factors that creates long-term cultural change. An assessment is a critical first step to understanding the root cause to achieve that long-term change. Proper assessment is going to prevent wasted spending and those misaligned solutions. Okay? Success does require addressing the real shapers and understanding what's really influencing behavior, not just those symptoms. And I'm not here to say that it's easy. It is a commitment, but it is definitely worth the investment. So, your next steps. What are you guys going to do tomorrow or this afternoon when you leave this webinar? Number one, just stop spending. Stop wasting money right now and time on solutions that might not work. Okay. If you have put a lot of time and effort and money into the solutions already, and you're considering like this isn't working, I need to add something, take a breath. Okay. Start with an assessment to understand what is working and where those disconnects are. Right. So then you can really see what's happening. Oftentimes when we come in and do assessment, our recommendations are to make safety programs a lot less complicated. We tend to end up saying, well, let's pull this out and let's do this. Let's make it easier on you as the organization, as the leaders, as well as your drivers. So take a pause, really focus on what's working, what's not working, do that assessment, and then find a targeted solution that it will address what is actually happening, that root cause. And this is where you might need some professional help if you're not fully knowledgeable about the behavioral science, but it's there. And there's things that you can do to take your steps even without a company like us. We're not saying that you need to go out and hire a huge consulting firm or anything like that. There are things internally that you can do. You might need some assistance down the road when you get to how we fix it and what solution could work. But you can get there. Now, if you do want more information and you're ready to transform your fleet or your safety of your fleet, you can definitely reach out. This QR code takes you to our website. The last thing I want to leave you on is just remember that every incident that has happened has a story. Okay? Most of them begin long before the rule was broken. So we need to get to that first step before they made the choice to break the rule, to speed, to skip the maintenance check or the walk around, whatever it might be. A behavioral lens helps you rewrite that story before it's too late. That's our whole goal. Take the proactive, preventative approach. Okay. So please don't let this just be another webinar you attended. Go take some action. Start thinking about how you can shift your view. And the first step in that is start with your assessment. Thank you all so much for coming. My email address is right here. We can definitely hop on a call or feel free to shoot me an email if you want more information or any additional resources.